All right, well, welcome to the Sports Guys. Another edition of Weekend Update, October 14th. This is Columbus Day. Hope all of you guys are having a great time. You're having a day off or whatever you're doing. Hope you're having a blast. And, of course, we're coming after another amazing weekend of sports. It's just action-packed every weekend. It's unbelievable. The college, the NFL, the baseball playoffs, it just never ends. And also wanted to call out to all you guys for all the incredible love we've been getting on the Strange Sports episode we did on Thursday. It's been so cool to see all the comments coming in, and even my dad's really into it, and so we're really excited to make a part 2 of that one. But anyway, how you doing, Robbie?
Oh, doing great. Really good. Had day off, hung out with the boys. We had a blast.
That's awesome. So I want to introduce a special guest, Mr. Henry Peralta from Blue Monday. How you doing, man?
Hello. How's you guys doing? I'm doing well.
Really glad you could join. I've been wanting you to join Sports Guys for a long time. You did join one time when you came on with Lizette, and we had a fantastic episode.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me.
One of our most watched episodes with you and Lizette, and people got to know you. And then, of course, now you've spun off a great podcast yourself, which is Henry's Rock Review. So if anybody wants to check out a really great rock review channel, check out Henry's Rock Review. I'll put the link in the comments down below, and you can check it out.
Thank you.
I do that with Henry, and he does such a great job reviewing amazing rock albums from the past. So it's pretty cool.
And he's hitting nonstop home runs on the selections of the albums.
Yeah, and we're still waiting to put out the latest one we did. I think Thomas is still finishing up the editing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just been unbelievable. Every single one we put out has been a huge hit. So, So Henry, tell us a little bit about yourself from people who haven't seen you before.
Well, I was born in Charlotte. I play in a band called Blue Monday. Been doing that for like about 10 years. I'm a musician, obviously, a singer. I play guitar, play bass. My favorite passion is football. I love the NFL, but I actually just like football, just normally, you know what I'm saying? I just like it like that. I mean, I know a little bit about baseball, a little bit about like NBA, a little bit about college football, stuff like that. But the NFL is the one that I like. And of course, if you can see my hat, I'm a big Raiders fan, even though my poor Raiders are just not doing well this year. And I had high hopes.
Well, my Panthers too. Like my Panthers. Same thing.
I'm not bringing up my Dolphins.
Man, how can the three of us like three teams that are so
bad? I know. All three of us have to beat L's and everything like that.
We need to make friends with a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, and we'll have it all covered.
Oh, my God.
Tell us how you became a Raiders fan. That's an interesting story.
So I think I was 5 years old or something. My brother C was watching the game, and I walk in. I'm like, "Who's that?" He goes, "It's the Raiders are playing." I think it's funny, they were playing the Jets. I can almost remember they were playing the Jets, and I remember like these ginormous men in silver and black just tearing up the team. It's like, "Oh, I like that team. I'm going to follow them."
Was it like Alzado or who was it?
I think it was Alzado. I think it was. John Matuzak and Alzado, all them, those monsters. And I loved it because remember back then when they could hit you, they could hit you. It's not like the way it is now where they flag you if you barely push them. Back then they went to tear your head off.
Oh, those guys were tough, man.
Oh my God. And for some reason they look so much bigger back then. I don't know if you guys noticed that. They just look so much bigger.
That's true.
It was the steroids. Did you hear the story? Did you hear the story about Alzado and those guys? Were going to the Super Bowl and they were stuck about a mile out and they just jumped out of their car, abandoned their car, and
because they would they wouldn't let him in. And one of I think Howie Long said, "We still think the car's still running."
Yeah.
Dude, going to the Super Bowl.
That just wouldn't happen today, man. Today you got police escorts, maybe even a helicopter.
You get the military bringing you in the stadiums now, but can you imagine that? You're going to the Super Bowl. Oh, you can't get in. What are you talking about? And
was that Kenny Stabler back then?
No, it was Marcus Allen, I think Howie Long, Lyle Alzado, and I think somebody else, right? Am I correct or am I wrong on that one?
Who's the quarterback?
I think it was Stabler at quarterback. I think that was
No, it was Jim Plunkett.
Oh, Jim Plunkett.
Plunkett, you're right. It was Plunkett. It was Plunkett.
Yeah, because that's when they played Washington, and they I can't say what they did.
I don't want to talk about that game. I don't want to talk about that. So I still have nightmares about that game.
Dude,
we grew up Washington. We got absolutely manhandled there.
Yeah, you did.
Marcus Allen just tore us up.
I mean, I remember Joe Theismann said we came in there with a silver platter, and the Raiders took it from us and they gave it back to us destroyed.
That game was brutal. Howie Long was brutal in that game.
Oh, they were. So that's how I became
that's cool.
NFL fan. But I like watching all these teams. I am a fan of the Ravens, Detroit, and the players, certain players. I mean, I really enjoy watching. So football Sunday to me is big. That's just the day where I actually just want to sit around, eat junk food, and just watch the games, all of them.
And you're married to a Giants fan, so that's
yes, I'm married to a Giants fan.
Yeah.
She loves the Giants, and so we've gone to a couple of games at the Panthers stadium, stuff like that. I mean, I even went to the game right before the Panthers went to the Super Bowl, which that was the most electric audience I think I've ever just been involved. It was amazing. Like, we never sat down, and it's so sad that they lost. I mean, you were there. It was just heartbreaking. Yeah. Because, I remember always saying, man, I've always wanted to go to a championship game. And then a school friend of mine that I've known for decades, a sweet, beautiful soul. Her name is Lisa. She was like, hey, I got an extra ticket. Do you want to go? I was like, you know it. So we went, and we had the absolute most amazing time. I even got my face painted for that championship game.
Super cool.
It was great. I had a great time.
Wow, so, that's awesome. Man, Jim Plunkett. I forgot about Jim Plunkett. He was Stanford, I think.
Yeah. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Raiders. I remember he was a quarterback when they beat the Philadelphia Eagles. And then he was a quarterback when obviously they beat Washington. It was a great he was a great quarterback. It wasn't anything flashy, but he was actually just good.
Because pretty much when you think of Stanford, you think of Jim Plunkett, you think of John Elway.
Yeah.
And then you think of I played for the Colts. He was like a lock, like number 1 pick. You knew he was going to be
Andrew Luck?
Yeah, Andrew Luck.
Andrew Luck.
Those 3 guys from Stanford. That's who I think about. Andrew Luck. Let's go take a look at the weekend games, and we'll make some comments.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, this is our weekend update for October 14th, 2024. You can see there's 4 teams that are considered the top 4 teams in college right now. Oregon, that had the big upset over Ohio State. We'll talk about that game in detail. Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia. Those are your top 4 now. Any thoughts on that ranking and those 4 guys kind of lined up for the playoff?
Now, isn't Georgia has the better record than all of them?
Well, Georgia has a loss. Ohio State has a loss.
Texas is 6-0.
Texas is 6-0, and Oregon is also undefeated. So those 2 teams, they're actually the top 2 teams now.
Yeah,
Texas and Oregon. Yeah. So, but Ohio State and Georgia, everyone knows, even though they both have a loss, are just fantastic and can go all the way. They've got the talent and the ability to do so. So, I think those are clearly the top 4 teams. You can throw 1 or 2 others in there that are really good. Obviously, Alabama's very good. Penn State is up there now.
Yeah, they're creeping up.
Yeah. I also have the Baltimore Ravens logo there. We're going to talk some more about whether we think they are now in the driver's seat in the AFC and whether their big win over the Commanders really kind of put them in that position. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the MLB playoffs. The Final 4 started yesterday with the Dodgers winning Game 1. It looks like right now the Mets are going to win Game 2, so that series is going to be tied up. So that's a really great series. And then you got Yankees and Guardians will start tonight as well. So those playoff series are underway. It's going to be really, really good baseball. Excited about it. So the first slide here is college football week 7. Some of the headlines coming out of this week 7. Oregon and Dan Lanning, who's their new coach, took over in the last 2 years. They got their first really big signature win. They end up now 6-0, having beaten Ohio State 39-38 in a thrilling game. Just incredible game. Utah's fading Big 12 hopes. They now have multiple losses, and it looks like their prediction that they were going to make the playoff is not going to come true for them now. They're just kind of fading and not as good as we thought they were going to be. Tide survive. Henry, you were talking about this game.
Yeah.
Somehow they win on South Carolina not being able to get a 2-point conversion. And also they give up a scramble at the end when there's an onside kick, and South Carolina actually gets the onside kick and actually has a last-second chance. What a crazy game that was. Quinn Ewers returns to Texas. He doesn't play very well. He looks really rusty. He'd been out for 4 weeks. and their defense just absolutely locked down Oklahoma. They could barely get a first down. Oklahoma ends up with 3 points.
Wow.
LSU plays Ole Miss, and everyone assumed that whoever won that game was going to be in really good position to be one of the 5 SEC teams to make the playoff, and somehow LSU comes out of that game with a victory, puts themselves back in the CFP race. In the Big 12, we mentioned Utah falling out, so that gives 2 teams the opportunity to jump into their place, and that is Iowa State and BYU. They're both undefeated. They're both playing really well. So we'll talk some about that. And then we have, as always, there's always some team coming up trying to get the number 12 spot. Every time they do, they end up losing, but Liberty has not. Liberty's sitting at 6-0. Everyone's saying they're now the kind of the sexy pick for the number 12 spot. Any of these highlights kind of strike you, Robbie?
I think the Oregon one is my background. I thought that was an incredible game. They just kept going back and forth. And it was just an amazing display of offense. And I think there was a lot of good games, actually. I don't think there were really that many upsets, but there were a lot of games that were close, or they were the leading team was down at a pretty late point in the game, and they had to fight their way back. There were a number of overtime games. So there was a lot of close football. The number of upsets was low, but there were definitely games that could have gone either way.
Never seen so many overtime games as this year. It just seems like there's about 5 or 6 every weekend. And you're right. I mean, a lot of times one team is leading by a lot and the other team comes back, ties it up, gets into overtime. Typically,
and oddly enough, the higher ranked team, the better ranked team is usually losing.
That's right. That's exactly
that was
right.
Sort of standard this weekend, very frequently.
Yeah, which goes to the parity we talked about. You know, one thing, Henry, we've talked about on other podcasts is that there's always so much parity in the NFL, but there's usually not that much in college football. Usually the big dogs beat the little dogs. But this year, we've seen a lot of parity in college football, at least more than usual.
I don't know if I'd say parity. What I would say in college so far this year is that there's been a lot more better matchups. Top 25 teams playing each other every weekend, all day long on Saturday. 9 versus 12 and 2 versus 3 and all that. I don't remember this many games. I just remember, Alabama blowing out, some no-name team almost every game of almost every weekend. And then when Ohio State, Michigan played, it was such an amazing matchup because we hadn't seen much of that all year. And right now, the way the schedule is, we're getting that every weekend.
But it's next weekend.
Next weekend's Georgia, Texas. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God.
That's right. That's right. The matchups have been better. The way they did the schedules are way, way better. All the all the rivalry games have been pushed out throughout the season now instead of all at the end of the season, which is a big deal.
That's right.
But it's not just the Tide that are surviving and barely scraping by. It's Georgia is struggling. It's a lot of the big teams struggling. Ohio State going on the road and can't get it done. You can call it parity. You can call it whatever you want to call it. For college football, this is an unusual season. Anybody can beat anybody this year.
Is that because of the way they schedule it, or is it because the lower teams are just getting better now? They're actually catching up to the big dogs.
We have a theory last weekend, and I want to run it by you, Henry. Our theory is that with the NIL and with transfer portal, nobody wants to sit on the bench anymore. So if you're the third back at Georgia and you're really good, you may sit there for a year. But if it looks like you're not going to play in year 2, you go ahead into the transfer portal and you go play for like Boise State or BYU or somebody.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
And then it makes those teams better, and it gives them a shot to actually beat the big boys because now you spread out the talent a lot.
Yeah, because if you're sitting there on the bench and you're better than number 2 and possibly number 1, you want to get out and go to a school that's going to give you a shot that can actually show who you are.
Right.
You're going to get paid too if you transfer. So you get incentivized to transfer. You're going to get your $500,000 from going to some school that's sort of competitive, but not necessarily at the top. And then you also are going to run into the fact that the schedule is better. The realignment has way better matchups than there have been in previous years.
Essentially, we used to have free agency in the NFL and no free agency in college, or very limited, right?
Right.
So what's
That's
happened
right.
now is college has become almost like the minor leagues to the NFL now. And you have this situation where people can transfer anytime they want from year to year, and they can go pursue playing time and better NIL deals. And what it's done is it's just spread the talent out a lot more.
There's nothing
It's
wrong with
also
that.
Yeah.
it's also
No,
keeping
no.
people in college for 5 and 6 years. You've got an incentive to stay at college and get paid NIL money, as opposed to declaring for the NFL and then going and fighting your way and getting put on the practice squad and then never really making the money. You can actually make more money in college sometimes. You have a
Yeah.
lot of examples of players who are taking pay cuts to go to the NFL. That was never the case in the past. People were itching to go at year 2, year 3. They don't do that anymore. They stay till year 5, year 6.
And interestingly, Henry, it's making the NFL draft better. Like if you look at every single round, it's deeper at every single position because guys are staying longer and they're more mature and they're better players.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Year
that's
5,
good.
year 6.
The
So it's making
maturity
the
is
NFL,
most important.
yeah, it makes the NFL draft a lot better too.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was to play, I think I would have done the same thing. If I would have been a player, I'd be like, "Yep, I'll wait. Why not?"
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think I'm going to sit on the bench for 3 years at Georgia and then finally play him.
Heck no, because I mean, you're not getting any
No.
experience. I want to get the experience. I want to be able to know.
You need to put your skills on tape, and the only way to do that is to get on the field.
Our friend Brad Moore's son, Jackson Moore, has been on our program. I did want to make a call out to him, Robbie, that he's made a couple field goals now for the App State Mountaineers, and just really proud of him. So call out to you, Jackson. A great job. And
Good job, Jackson.
he found himself third on the depth chart last year at Kentucky as kicker, and he was a really excellent place kicker here from Charlotte. And he transferred to App State because he knew he could get playing time. So it's the same thing, Henry, for him. Now he's in his second year and he's kicking for App State instead of sitting behind a couple guys in Kentucky.
Absolutely, I would have done. I'd be doing the same thing. I'm like, nope, I'm not going to sit here like this.
Yeah.
Go somewhere else.
In fact, I think our conclusion from talking to him was the majority of people are transferring for playing time more than they are payday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they just want to play. You don't want to just sit there, right?
Yeah, I want to play. You'll get if God willing, you'll get your money later. Play now. Show what you got.
That's right.
That's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right. Well, let's talk about this first slide here. Oregon now a top 2 team is the big question here. Would Ohio State win if they played again in the playoff? What are you guys' thoughts on this?
I mean, obviously, Ohio State's going to play Oregon different. They're going to have a different game plan. And if, being a great coach that you are, you're going to change that game plan because you definitely saw their weaknesses during the game, and you're going to expose that in the second game. If you do end up, just like the NFL, teams that play each other twice, they don't exactly play the exact same way each time.
Not only that, but Oregon is one of the toughest places in the country to play. It's 65,000 only, but apparently it is so loud you can't hear yourself think. And so they have just a huge home field advantage. You can add, tack on maybe 5 or 6 points to a normal game because of their home field advantage. So yeah, exactly. So I just think if Ohio State plays them on a neutral field in the playoff, I'm going to give the edge to Ohio State. I just think they're the better team, but I think on this day, obviously Oregon got it done.
Yeah.
I got a couple of thoughts on it. I think Oregon is not the second best team in the country. They certainly had an impressive win over Ohio State at home. I think Ohio State's still the better team, but not by much. Oregon was very, very impressive, especially on offense, but their defense was good. But one thing I heard that was interesting was that the offensive line play in college is more important than in the NFL. And there's several reasons for that, but the main reason is that in the NFL, everyone's good. There's a lot fewer weaknesses. And when Oregon started the season, they had 3 of their starting guys banged up. Some were trying to play hurt and some were out. And so I think you saw a really sluggish team because the offensive line was not cohesive and functioning properly. They got all their guys back now, and it makes all the difference. So it gives them time to run their offense, and they look like a different team. The second thing that's really interesting was they had a really interesting finish to this game. They had they called a timeout with 10 seconds left, and Ohio State was driving. And then Oregon came out of the timeout and had 12 guys on the field defensively.
Intentionally, right?
Intentionally.
Yeah.
And when they ran the play, they threw the flag, and they had run 4 seconds off the clock. You don't get the time back. So he traded a 5-yard penalty for 4 seconds when there was only 10 seconds left, and it left them with not enough time to really do anything. And so the Ohio State quarterback panicked and tried to sit down, and he got confused and he ran the clock out. But the reason they were under that much pressure was because they intentionally did a penalty that was meant to draw down 4 seconds out of the 10. It's kind of a genius move.
I've never heard of it. That is really smart. Yeah. I wonder if they need to look at that, though, because that seems like.
I think they're going to change the rule.
They got to look at that.
I think they spoke about it last night during the Giants and Cincinnati game. I think the Giants were doing that also. Was it? I want to say it was the last night game or the game before they were talking about that. They did that on purpose. They put 12 men on the field, taking time off, and you're right. You never get the seconds back. You don't get the time back, and it was done on purpose.
Yeah,
they got to look at that. I don't think that's right.
I agree, but I think Oregon's coach might be 3 steps ahead of everybody else. But if you look at the stats, they were really, really even. It was an excellent game. That looked like a college playoff game. And I'm so excited to see those two lock up either with each other again or with like-minded.
I will tell you, Dylan Gabriel and Will Howard were really highly recruited quarterbacks, and neither one played very well this year so far. They all had been winning, but neither one had really kind of broken out. And it was super cool to see both of them broke out in this game. They both played fantastic.
They both lit it up in this game. Yards, touchdowns, everything.
And so if you're just a college football fan in general, to see these two, because these guys are going to be here a while, right? And so to see these guys, they're going to be heads up probably 1 or 2 or 3 more times in their careers. So pretty cool to see. Yeah.
I mean, look at the score, 31-32. I mean, obviously it was a, back and forth.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a game. See, I like watching games like that.
Great game.
I'm not a fan of blowouts. I'm really not. I'm just like, dang it, man. But when you see games like this, you know that these kids or these players are literally scratching with their fingernails, crawling to just win the game. And they're playing their hearts out.
If you think about how impressive this was, Henry, this was Oregon's first Big Ten win, right? They're new in this conference. So they come into a conference where they play the number 1 team in that conference, Ohio State. Everyone's assuming they're going to go 13-0 and maybe win the national championship.
Yeah.
And they win their first Big Ten game against this team.
That's amazing. Vanderbilt, 40 years since they beat Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and nobody thought they were going to win. Like,
no.
Well, they're the basement of that. They're the basement of the SEC. So yeah.
Well, look at the stats though. That was not an upset in terms of them getting lucky with the win, running out of there. They manhandled all 3 phases. Yeah. They had 42 minutes of time of possession versus 17. Mm-hmm. They blew them out of the water in yardage, points. It was it was a domination, probably more than the score even indicated.
That's right.
I mean, because a lot of people, even myself, I'm like, they're not going to beat Alabama. And then when I was watching the score, and I was like, oh my gosh,
that was a
great
game.
Beat Alabama. I was like, they're really going to beat them.
Yeah,
and
it was wild. At halftime, I thought, okay, Alabama's going to come storming back. Vandy's played them way tougher than they expected, but Alabama's going to take control. And every time Alabama would score, Vandy would answer. It was just like,
almost immediately
far away from being able to be pulled out.
I was watching Joel Klatt. He knows college football probably better than anybody. He knows the SEC really well. He said Alabama's defense this year, and really Georgia's defense too, both of them are not the same. And they're both what he called leaking oil. And he said after that Vanderbilt game, he said, I want to see if that Alabama defense will leak oil again. And they did. They got run up and down on by South Carolina. So I'm just very concerned about Alabama's defense. I'm very concerned about Georgia's defense. It's pretty soft too. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Those two teams, obviously, they're going to be in the top, 6, 7 teams. They're going to make the playoff, but I wouldn't give either one of them to be the favorite right now, I would say.
The thing is, I think both those teams are loaded with 5 stars, so I think they'll be able to figure it out. If they play like that, they're going out early in the playoff, no question. But when you have a lot of 5 stars and you're getting kind of shook like that, your ability to pull it all together is still there in front of you. Like
I will say they both have very good coaches, so there is a chance they could pull it together for sure. But they're struggling right now. Let's take a look at another story here. This is Boise State's Ashton Jeanty. And there are a couple questions here. First one is he the best running back in college football? I think the answer to that is yes.
Yes.
Is he the most exciting player in college football? And Rob, I think you say no. I think he might be. I wasn't sure until this past week, but when I saw his highlights for the last 3 weeks in a row,
I don't say no. I say he's tied with another player, and those two are the two most exciting I've seen in decades, probably.
Every time he touches the ball, he can go to the house. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, it was funny. I was listening to commentators talking about how they were trying to follow the Boise State game, and it kept saying Jeanty touchdown, 58-yard run, and all that. And they were trying to remember, is that a new one or is that the same stat I was looking at? And they kept looking, it'd be a 64-yard run, and he just kept piling them up, and they couldn't even keep track of how many touchdowns this guy was hitting home runs on. And
I talked to my son this weekend, and Henry, my son's name is Ashton. So we were talking about this guy, Ashton Jeanty, that they share the same first name, which is cool. And we watched some of the highlights together. And here in a second, I'm going to show the two of you some of his major highlights from the year. We're going to show the Sports Guyz fans some of his incredible highlights. So we'll do that here in a second. So the final question on this slide is he the best running back in NCAA history? That's a pretty bold statement, I think. What do you think?
I can't really comment because I don't know much about him, but I mean, if you're telling me that they're saying, 64-yard touchdown, 58-yard touchdown, I mean, the guy is
within 2 minutes of each other or whatever.
He's just phenomenal.
I mean, there you go. I mean,
and he doesn't have exactly the best offensive line in football. You know what I mean? He's on Boise State. They're good, but he's not with one of the big programs. So it's just pretty well. You guys watch these highlights. You tell me. Maybe you'll change your mind.
I think he might be. I think it's 50-50 whether he is or not. He's real close, if not.
Well, I'm going to show you the highlights now, and you guys tell me what you think. Here we go.
Heisman-esque performance from the junior running back from Texas.
Jeanty, his first touch. And typical Ashton Jeanty. Look.
He's got power, speed, great vision.
He's like a small version of Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I mean, he's so athletic, and he's low to the ground, and he's thick and fast and quick.
Now, I've never seen Derrick Henry jump over anybody, but goodness.
He's slippery, but he's the biggest home run hitter since McCaffrey, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's good gosh, man.
I mean, who else is taking it to the house from their own 20? This guy, It's crazy.
He's literally even pushing people down with one arm. Like I said, that's why kind of that, like, goodness gracious.
I mean, it's got to be the scariest thing for a linebacker because if he gets by you, he's probably gone.
Dude, he's like, they're smelling his dust.
Yeah.
Look at that. Wow.
That's against Oregon.
Dude, they can't bring him down either. Goodness gracious. Look at that. Dude, he had 2 guys on him.
I know. It's not even fair. That's Oregon, isn't it? No.
Dude, How many guys are going to miss him?
He's just a touchdown machine, really. There are other running backs who are potentially equal to him, but I can't think of one that's better than he is. And I just can't imagine being a defender having to try to corral him and get him on the ground.
I wonder how much he weighs.
I don't know. He's pretty thick.
Yeah, he looks really thick. Like I'm saying, imagine any NFL team, if he was to run like that for any NFL team, they would, oh my gosh, they'll give him the bank.
Yeah, he's got a low center of gravity.
Play for either the Panthers or the Raiders or the Dolphins.
Raiders, bring him to the Raiders.
You know what it is about him? He is the combination of power. He breaks tackles. He does that little jump step out to the left or right. He jumps the little jump step where he stiff
like Barry Sanders.
And then he gets one little crease and he's gone. You have no chance.
Do you know how much?
He kind of reminds me of Barry Sanders.
Yeah. Do you know how much he weighs, Thomas? Is he like
He's like 180.
180.
Yeah, he's like 5'11", 180, something like that.
He's 5 what?
Geez, he looks heavier than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those legs are
massive.
We haven't seen a home run hitter like this in a long time in college football. You don't usually want to take a first-round running back. They did with McCaffrey. He was worth it. This guy's worth a first-round pick.
Yeah, I would use it in a heartbeat.
No doubt about it.
Because he can catch the ball. He gets touchdowns by receiving little screen passes.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to show you guys a little bit of what this guy can do.
I mean, that is, to me, he's amazing. I hope he stays at it and somebody picks him up because that is
and goes to the Raiders.
Yes, please go to my Raiders. We need help.
All right, let's look at the big college scores from the weekend. We got Texas just absolutely took Oklahoma out to the woodshed in what's supposed to be a huge rivalry game, the Red River rivalry. And Oklahoma, as really we've seen for most of the year, they just don't have much offense. They're a really good defensive team.
Yeah, they fumbled twice.
Texas is clearly the better team from beginning to end, and it wasn't much of a game, really.
And Europe didn't put on much of a display either. Like he was
wasn't
a
great.
bit rusty.
He wasn't great, yeah.
So they obliterated Oklahoma with mediocre quarterback play.
That's right. We talked about Oregon.
Don't get me wrong. Ewers is awesome. It's just he didn't play awesome that one day.
He is, yeah.
Coming back from his injury.
Bottom line is they're just so much better that they just took care of business that day. It wasn't even close.
That's right.
Oregon game, we talked about that pretty in depth. All right, so let's talk about Penn State, USC. What a fantastic game this was. One of the ones Rob mentioned earlier that went to overtime. Incredible game. USC really needed to have this one. They could not drop a third one and still be considered for the playoff. And they end up dropping their third loss in overtime against a Penn State team that just continues to roll on. Nobody talks about them. They just win every week, and now they're up into the top four teams in the country. Any thoughts about this game?
Well, I mean, Penn State is awesome. I mean, they have a wide receiver, Tyler Warren, who had 17 catches for 224 yards and a touchdown.
Wow.
They're incredible. They had 28 first downs. So, yeah, that was a really good game.
It was a really good game. And, it was at USC. That's why people were actually giving USC a chance here. And they really felt like Lincoln Riley needed this one really badly. I'm starting to wonder, do you think he's the guy there? Is he going to be able to get this team now?
I do. I think he needs to beef up the defensive coordinator and situation and players. But there were a lot of turnovers in that game.
Yeah.
LR threw 3 interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And Moss threw an interception.
Yeah.
They had good QBRs, but they definitely had mistakes.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
I wonder.
the defense played well there, but
I wonder about USC and whether he's going to get it turned around there. I guess we'll see. They talked about Lincoln Riley. When he came into Oklahoma, he had so much success, but he came and inherited a team that had all 5 stars. And now the wonder is, can he really recruit with some of these other big programs? And
I do think so. But I think the beginning of the year there were 2 teams that were remarkably overrated. It's not that they're not great teams, but they were too high. Missouri and USC. I think USC beat LSU really early on, and everyone catapulted them way up the ladder, and I think that was a mistake. I think they're, not being ranked, I'm not sure I would do that, but I think they're top 25, but just barely.
Yeah, that's
I think
right.
expectations were too high for USC after the LSU victory.
And I think dropping them out of the top 25 is reasonable now. I mean, they're 3-3, 1-3 in the Big Ten. We talked about whether they were really ready for the Big Ten. It doesn't look like it. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how they salvage their season here. Next one we got is Georgia, Mississippi State. This is an incredible game. Henry, you love offensive games. There were 72 points in this game.
That's a lot, man.
Yeah, and Georgia wins, and Carson Beck plays well. But, again, that warning sign in your car, the red light blinking, and it is that Georgia's defense is not good. They gave up 550 yards of offense to a 1-5 Mississippi State team. And Mississippi State had almost 300 yards rushing. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on with Georgia's defense. It's not championship caliber, even close. They really probably should have lost this game. So any thoughts about this one?
The truth is Mississippi State is one of the worst teams in the SEC.
That's right. Vanderbilt's clearly better than Mississippi State.
Carson Beck had 2 interceptions, but he had some pretty gaudy numbers.
He did. He played well.
He had 459 yards throwing and 3 touchdowns.
Yep.
So 2 INTs. He had a 75 QBR. So
is Kirby Smart going to be able to get this defense to where he wants it? I guess that's the question.
I personally think Alabama and Georgia are better defensively than what we've seen the last couple weeks. So I don't know. It just depends on whether you want to hit the panic button. I don't think you need to. I think you got 5 stars everywhere, and they're going to figure out the schemes a little better. I don't know if you're talking national championship level, but I think their defenses are going to start to gel a little bit more. Maybe.
Well, don't you think we're going to find out next week when they play Texas?
Yeah.
We're going to find out a lot about Georgia next week. And see, not only can they score,
and have their hands full,
because Texas has a significantly better defense than Mississippi State. So
but Ewers having that shaky game, coming back off injury, I don't know. It's going to get complicated if he plays a little shaky again, because then you go to Arch Manning. Is there a controversy there?
Right.
You might have a split locker room.
It's true. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing that one. Next game is Alabama, South Carolina. This is the game Henry was talking about, just one of those epic games. Alabama somehow with their fingernails hangs on in this one.
Yeah, they should have lost that game.
It felt like it was South Carolina upset special. And Alabama holds on 27-25. Again, huge warning signs. South Carolina rolling up lots of yardage on these guys. Huge holes in the Alabama defense, both from a running and a secondary perspective. Just not the defense we're used to seeing. Thoughts on this one, Henry?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Alabama just barely scathed. I mean, they're not the Alabama that was with obviously Nick Saban. So, I mean, but they still won. Win is a win, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's just what it all matters is the W. But I mean, we'll see as the season keeps going, see how bad Alabama, I guess, could be, how weak they really are. You never know.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think we talked about, Henry, Rob, and I, that SEC is just a brutal gauntlet every single week. You can't take any game for granted.
Nope.
You see the game down below. We're about to talk about Tennessee, Florida. Same thing. Every week you play one of these teams, you can lose, and it's just brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see if DeBoer can get that team turned around, especially that defense. Which is pretty
but But defense wasn't really the problem in this game. Both teams had 4 sacks on each other, and there were a ton of turnovers. So I'm always I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I'm never sure how much credit to give to the defense when there's a fumble. It kind of depends on whether it was caused by the defense or if it was just bad luck.
Well, like when they punch it out, it's deliberate. But
that's a defensive play. That's check positive for the defense. But what about in that Virginia game? It has nothing to do with this, but it was a perfect example where the offensive lineman was engaged and his leg whipped around and knocked the ball out of Calandria's hand.
Right.
That's not a defensive play. Like that's,
right.
You know what I mean?
That was just not a freak situation.
Credit to the defense shouldn't just automatically be given for a turnover. So, but there were a lot of turnovers in that game and a lot of aggressive defensive plays, sacks. So I don't think defense was such a problem in that game. The quarterback play was decent. And I think South Carolina gets a lot of good athletes. So
true. And South Carolina has been better. They've been better than expected this year, South Carolina. They really have been tough. Yeah. Nobody really wants to blame them. It's not
an embarrassing victory for Alabama, but at the same time, you got to ask some questions. But
that's right.
But so Milroe 209 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
That's
not great.
That's not Alabama's defense's fault.
That's not good. That's not
great.
So next game also went to overtime. This game was just, I don't know what the heck's going on with Tennessee's offense. This is the 3rd week in a row that they just can't do anything. It was 3-0 at half Florida. I mean, it was just bizarre. And then finally Tennessee gets some points in the second half. They end up taking it to overtime, 17-17, very low-scoring game in the SEC. And somehow Tennessee comes out on top with a 23-17 victory, maintains their 5-1 record. But they're having warning signs just like Georgia and Alabama, but their warning signs are on the offensive side of the ball. Just unable to move the ball for a whole half. Any thoughts about this one?
I don't know. I think I am concerned about Tennessee, how they're looking right now. Florida started really poorly, and I think they're actually much better than they looked the first couple of games. They're not going to be in the playoff, but they're going to beat some good teams this year because they're a good team. They're just not great. They're not a great team.
And Napier's also playing for his coaching life because they think he's really on the hot seat. So you're going to see Florida rally, I think, around Napier. So.
I will say Amaliva looked pretty bad in this game. He looked bad. His QBR was 17.5.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he could have knelt down every play and been better than he ended up
if you kneel down every play, it's 31% QBR. Is that what it is? 31
Something
QBR.
Like that, yeah, around 30.
So when you're in the 17 range, it's pitiful. Time of possession, Florida 34 and Tennessee 25. So, Florida had the ball. They couldn't do much with it. They were getting first downs.
So 4 weeks ago, Tennessee was scoring like 51 to 55 points a game. You had Nico, their quarterback. They were rumoring him as the next Heisman Trophy winner. And 4 weeks later, they have a struggling offense that can't do very much. Is lots of 3-and-outs and lots of turnovers. So what is it about Nico? Is he just in a slump? Is it that their play calling isn't good? I don't know. It's just head scratching.
I don't know. Tennessee's running the ball really well. They're just not throwing it well. I'm Aliva. I don't know what's wrong with him. It could be that there's a lot of pressure. Maybe their offensive line isn't standing up very well. But he's rattled and he's not playing well. And they're having to run the ball just to survive. They're going to have to get that corrected. I'm a lot more worried about that than I am Alabama or Georgia's defense.
I agree with that. I'm more concerned for Tennessee than I am for Alabama and Georgia. I agree with that. But there still are warning signs on all three of these teams.
Yeah. These are flawed teams that have incredible players and they're very good teams. They just have some warning signs for sure.
So next game we talked about was Ole Miss and LSU, and neither one of these teams wanted to get a second loss. They both want to try to sneak into the Final 12. and neither one really could afford a second loss, and we didn't really know what was going to happen here. This one also went to overtime. One of the many overtime games Saturday. It was a great game. Really good quarterback play, really good offensive plays around the board, and LSU gets it done in overtime with a field goal. Any thoughts on this one?
I think Ole Miss kind of shot themselves in the foot. They had 12 penalties for 110 yards. That's a lot of mistakes, and honestly, Nussmeier's stats are amazing. 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a 72.9 QBR. So he's come a long way back from that bad game against.
They lost to USC.
USC beat them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nussmeier's come on. He's starting to look much better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Ole Miss sitting with 2 losses now, unlikely to make the playoff at this point. Their trajectory, they've got some other big games coming up. They're essentially going to have to beat Alabama and Georgia on their run to the playoff.
Yeah, they're going to be on the outside looking in, but they're still going to be probably
LSU
ranked.
LSU's in the driver's seat because we believe 5 SEC teams will get in, and probably LSU will probably sneak in there.
If Nussmeier keeps playing like that, for the most part, yeah.
Next game is Clemson, Wake Forest. Wake is a really solid team. They're not great, but they're solid. And everyone was thinking this would be kind of like a 10 or 13-point contest. And Clemson just took them to the woodshed. And no one saw this coming. Clemson's been playing really well, but this doesn't happen typically between these two teams. Typically, Wake plays them really tough. So is this more of a function of Wake is kind of collapsing, or is this that Clemson really is back?
I think Clemson is like Wake Forest is collapsing.
Yeah, I think Clemson's just clicking right now. I mean, they beat them pretty badly in time of possession, 36-23. Mm-hmm. Klubnik looked great, 37 first downs.
I know.
31-41, 309 yards.
They ran it up and down the field.
8.2 QBR.
And Wake has a decent defense, and they just absolutely spanked them.
Yeah, it was just too much for them. Clemson is a legitimate team. They just look really bad in week 1.
I mean, look at how many points they scored in the second quarter, 28.
Yeah,
guys,
right.
I'm not going to be surprised if Clemson wins the ACC.
Look at that, dude.
I think they will.
I'm not going to be surprised if they beat Miami.
When you look at the way Miami's playing and barely squeaking by decent teams but not great teams, yes, yeah. I think Clemson is the best team in the ACC right now.
I'm not sure about it, but I feel like it's kind of a coin flip right now.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. This was kind of an embarrassing loss for Wake. They always play them tough and just were never in this game. So I don't know what to say about Wake's season, but usually
you never want to get spanked at home in front of your home crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the way my Raiders did yesterday.
That's right. Poor Henry. Actually, I was talking to Rob about it, and I said, "Oh, poor Henry."
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I did.
Bad day.
Poor Henry. Let's talk about this next one. Our friend Luke, he's coming on in 2 weeks on the Sports Guyz. Can't wait to have him. He is just on fire right now because his Iowa State Cyclones just win every week, sitting at 6-0 now. They're in the driver's seat for the Big 12. Utah has faded. They do have to compete with BYU, who's also in the Big 12. Both teams are 6-0, as you can see. They took care of a really good West Virginia team. I thought this might be a really tough contest, maybe like a 3-point contest. But just kind of took care of them. We're clearly the better team all day. Any thoughts on Iowa State rolling?
It was a nice win. Nothing statistically was that impressive, but it was definitely a nice-looking win. Their quarterback had an 81 QBR, so very solid. They look like the better team.
Absolutely. And BYU, any thoughts on them too? I mean, it seems like these two teams are on a collision course for the Big 12 championship. And by the way, only one of these two teams will make the playoff because it looks like they're projecting only one team from the Big 12.
BYU looks great too.
So the question is are these two teams on a collision course for the Big 12 championship game? I think so. right?
Yeah.
And then it just comes down to who wins that game to go. It'll be interesting to watch. Next game we had, pretty interesting game. We had Shedeur Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes, who had a really nice start to the season, playing Kansas State, who's a very solid team, really well coached, have a lot of good talent on their side. It was a great game, came down to the really end. Colorado was trying to come back, but couldn't quite get there. Kansas State wins 31-28, gives Colorado their second loss. Thoughts on this one? Shedeur had a big day. Hunter. I will say that Kansas State's running back did maybe the juke of the year on Shiloh Sanders, who's Shedeur's brother. It's the kind of stat and highlight you don't want to see. I'm going to show you guys some highlights here in a second. You'll see that particular play where he literally jukes him out of his jock. But for the most part,
I think Kansas State's D played really well. They got, 6 sacks.
Mm-hmm.
They had 6 sacks on Sanders. And they got a pick on him. But Sanders had a nice game. He ran quite a bit, 30 yards or so.
Well, Colorado keeps, in the games they lose, they keep finding themselves down 24-7 like they did in this game.
Yeah.
You can't spot a team like Kansas State 24-7 and expect to come back every time.
No.
It just doesn't.
I was impressed with their defense.
And then he comes back with a furious 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. It just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think Colorado was outclassed in any way. I think they can hang with these guys. I don't know. It was a great game. Big 12 is, I think, overall better than we expected it to be. There's a lot of good teams in the Big 12.
Colorado had some injuries that really affected them too.
Yeah. Last game on the board, I put it on here only because Notre Dame is relevant, and looks like they're headed back towards the playoff again after their crushing upset a couple weeks ago. Took down a pretty good Stanford team, completely blanked them in 3 of the 4 quarters, and they won 49-7, and it just wasn't even close. And it feels like Notre Dame's running game is really there now, where they want it to be. Thoughts on this one?
Notre Dame's looking good on both sides of the ball. They're running the ball well, and now their quarterback's playing well. He had 3 touchdowns with a 94.6 QBR.
Mm-hmm.
That's Leonard. And Notre Dame defense had 4 sacks. Notre Dame gave up 200 yards total, and they had 477 to the positive.
Mm-hmm.
So they pretty much dominated both sides of the ball.
Yeah, Riley Leonard transferred from Duke and had a really slow start to the season, and people were kind of wondering whether he was going to be the guy, but it really looks like he's turned it around now. He's playing well.
Yeah.
So, they're pointing in the right direction right now, Notre Dame.
Yeah, if they can just keep putting it together, they're going to be fine.
So here's our winners and losers of the week. We got Oregon, Penn State, Texas, Boise State continues to win. Iowa State and BYU both are 6-0. Those are our winners of the week. Our losers of the week, Ohio State with a 1-point loss on the road. Bama, although they won, are not looking impressive at all. Really wondering if they really should be the number 17. SC has now fallen out of the playoff chase with their 3rd loss. Ole Miss is on the outside looking in now in the SEC. And Utah has faded so badly that they're not even really being considered part of the playoff picture either. Any thoughts on these winners or losers?
I agree with all of them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Alabama really is a loser, but they're getting close if they don't tighten up.
Only put them there because they really should have lost that game.
Yeah.
I think what it is with how us and maybe a couple people are looking at Alabama, we're just not used to seeing Alabama be so vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because we're used to seeing Alabama destroy every single team almost,
Yeah.
And right now we're seeing a very vulnerable Alabama. That's so
true.
different. It's so different. I mean, it's kind of like looking at the Patriots now. We were so used to watching the Patriots being so dominant for all those years, and now you see them losing left and right. And now Kansas City is like the next hot team that's taking everybody out too. So yeah.
That's a really good point, Henry. The
You're right, Henry. not only do they look not as strong, but they also look different. I mean,
Yeah,
Alabama in the past they always had 2 All-American running backs, the biggest offensive line you've ever seen. They were going to bulldoze you. And then their defense would come out and, 7 of the 11 starters were first or second round picks. It was just the defense was solid.
Yeah,
And
so both
it's not
sides.
looking like that anymore. Now they're throwing the ball more. They're not steamrolling you running the ball, and their defense isn't intimidating. So it's a different era.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I wonder, is it the switch over from Saban to DeBoer? I mean, is that going to take a year or two? Maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
It's a different system and all that.
I mean, Nick Saban was
I think
genius, man.
Saban brought fear, and he was also a very good recruiter. And I think it remains to be seen whether DeBoer is an incredible recruiter or not. I think he's a good teacher.
And Ohio State went through this. Ohio State went through this with Ryan Day, and they're in the year 3 of the Ryan Day experiment, and they're still transitioning. It's taken them a while to get used to Ryan Day's system. So I think there's something to that. And same thing with SC with Lincoln Riley. I mean, they're going to have to give him. He's in year 2. It takes a while for these college coaches to put their stamp on it.
Yeah, I think DeBoer wants to throw the ball.
Yeah. You have Sarkisian now in his 3rd year at Texas. He's finally put his stamp on that program, right? So, it takes a while for these coaches, especially in college, for them to kind of get their system in place and get their recruits in place.
You're absolutely right about Sarkisian. If you had told me 3 years ago this would be the Texas team, I wouldn't have guessed it.
Yeah, that's right.
I wouldn't have guessed it.
That's right. So the AP poll, again, majorly scrambled. We got Texas still at the top, but now Oregon has risen all the way up to 2. Penn State at 3, Ohio State 4, Georgia 5, Miami 6, which I completely disagree with. They've been barely scraping by. I think they may be top 10, but I wouldn't put them at 6. Alabama 7. Only reason they didn't drop from 7, they stayed right where they are, is because they did win, even though it was kind of unimpressive. LSU now vaunts up into the top 10 at 8. Iowa State, a new top 10er at 9. And Clemson, a new top 10er at 10. So all 3 of those teams new to the top 10. So any thoughts about this huge scramble this week?
I would put Clemson at number 6.
6? Yeah.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
I think you're right. I think they're better than Miami right now. If I had to bet on those 2 teams playing a neutral site game in Charlotte, let's say, I think Clemson's the better team.
My top 4 haven't changed, so I'm different than these poll writers and the reporters. I still think Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama are the top 4 teams in the country. That's me personally. I'm glad to see Ohio State, Penn State, and LSU are moving up. Iowa State is. I think Clemson should be in the top 6 or 7. They're starting to impress me. Miami should move down.
Do you agree with Henry that maybe Miami and Clemson should be switched?
Yeah, but I'd move Alabama and Ohio State up. I wouldn't have Oregon and Penn State higher than Alabama and Georgia.
Oregon 2 just seems a little crazy, and I think Penn State 3 is a little crazy. Those 2 teams are good, but
I think Oregon and Penn State have done a lot to improve their stock, but I don't think it's enough to be in the top 2 and 3 slots. But the good news is there's a lot of time to let this stuff play out, and at the end of the day, if Alabama or Georgia have another stumble, then this was right on, and they'll probably fall further, but we'll see.
Let's go take a look at some of the highlights.
Wide from the tight end spot. Gabriel keeps plenty of space, and he's still going. Gabriel makes a move. He's gone.
Room down here at the bottom for Jeremiah Smith.
3rd and 20. Howard, a lot of time coming off. Howard's going to run for it. Time runs out, and that'll do it.
Oh, my goodness.
Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon. They storm the field at Autzen, and the Ducks win this bout 32-31.
They send Williams out as a receiver. Garrett Nussmeier to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown! Aaron Anderson! Pump fake, Nussmeier goes back shoulder. Touchdown! Kyron Lacey!
That was for the win. For the win.
3rd down and 10. Milroe back to pass. Wants more than 10, and he's got it. Only an 8-point game. South Carolina. Here's the strike they want to the end zone. Incomplete.
Players in college football on the go route working against Jackson. Watch this. Catch. Right foot down.
My!
Did he have possession when the right foot was...
Sellers looking for something to the end zone. Overthrows it. In this onside scenario, here it is. It's a wobbler. It's got to go 10 yards. It's loose. It's loose. South Carolina's got it. South Carolina's got it. Sellers, is there some magic in his arm? Intercepted. Damani Jackson, who left the game injured, came back and is going to put an end to it right here. That was awesome stuff.
Johnson almost picked off. It is. Jumped and picked off. Hood. Colton Hood stumbles and falls. 2nd and 4. Sanders, quick release. Complete. They go ahead. Lester. Giddens in the backfield. The play fake. One-on-one down the sidelines. Caught! Flag! Touchdown! Brown doing it for the Cats!
Lions in the backfield. It's an end around. They fake it to Branch. And on the keeper, Quentin Joyner. Joyner in a foot race with a secondary at Penn State. And he won it. Touchdown! As a receiver again and it's going to be a double pass. Aller loads, fires, deep. Man there is Warren. Got it! Touchdown, Penn State! In overtime. And it's wide left. He missed it. 36 yards for a Nittany Lion win. Got it. Penn State in overtime.
Florida moved him.
Over the middle towards the end zone. He's got his man DK for a touchdown. No good. Sampson.
Good job of getting it out of his hands.
Wiesner makes a cut. Wiesner loses the football, bounces into the end zone to scramble for it, trying to make the recovery is Silas Bolden, and he does for a Texas touchdown.
7 seconds. And they're going to run it, and it's explosion right down the middle of the field. You just said it, Max Brown. Can you believe that?
Now Beck rolls, throws end zone. Bell. Yes! Dylan Bell has been terrific in the first half of the season.
It's a strong leg. Lewis handles the kickoffs. Here is Scatterboo. Contact balance. Stays on his feet. And rumbles into the end zone. Why not? Juice. Candyman. Scatterboo.
You grew up in this town. You're an alum. When you look around and you see this moment, what's it like for you?
It's kind of crazy. I was one of these guys. I was doing this.
Brown looking for Maccabee. Touchdown, Purdue.
Hugh Robertson. The kick is good.
A winner.
And it's going to come pretty quick. Altmaier to the end zone. Did he?
Got him. In trouble! Goes down! It's over! Illinois wins! Watch this.
Oh. I mean, the man with the best view is sitting right underneath that upright.
Reviewing the play, the ball went over the upright, which makes it technically unreviewable. Therefore, the field goal is good. Iowa's charged with timeout, but retains their challenge for the remainder of the game.
Now, the people in black and gold are saying, first down at 10 to the 33. Watch this trick play coming up. Down the field. Caught. Touchdown. L.J. Martin.
Feature back here. Stewart in motion. Yeah, a little freeze option runs.
Breaks a tackle. Bryson Daly is loose. Looking for the end zone. He's in. Touchdown, Army.
Great run here by Bryson Daly following his offensive lineman. Then watch the stiff arm. Get off of me. I'm Bryson Daly, and I'm getting in the end zone. Double pass again. They're going to try it. Golden chucks into the end zone. And this time they make the catch. He threw into double coverage.
Jeanty bounces outside, has a seam. Ashton Jeanty, he's 10, he's touchdown, Boise State.
We'll always have that field goal at the end of the first half. Oh, Caleb Johnson breaks free. Johnson switches back, my goodness, again.
What do you guys think of that?
Whoa.
Pretty good action.
That is great football.
You know what I realize, and I hate to say this, and Henry, you'll probably disagree with me, but I think it's more exciting in college football. I really do.
It is. It is because
there's
of the
more
crowd.
explosive plays.
Yeah.
It's so hard to score in the NFL, and it's just
When you got the crowd screaming, you got the announcers losing their mind. They storm the field. I mean,
I'm sorry.
I mean, a lot of the stadiums are bigger.
It's a more exciting product. It just is.
It is.
There's more
I
explosive
100%.
plays.
Yeah.
You get an Ashton.
Well, it's because you don't have lockdown corners in college.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
All those throwing plays would be knocked away by most of the corners in college.
That's right.
I mean, in the pros.
That's exactly right. Well, Henry, we want to thank you so much for coming tonight, man. Your football insight, your love of the sport just comes through the screen, man.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. So much fun. I love talking because I don't really get to talk to too many people about sports.
The fact that you don't get to talk about music. Yeah.
Yeah, go Raiders. I'm so sad. I had high hopes.
Come on, O'Connell might turn it on.
Yeah.
Who are we going to root for this year now? Like all of us are bad. What are we going to do?
I'm gonna tell you the three teams that I'm rooting for.
Commanders.
Yeah, I'm not rooting for them. I'm rooting for the Ravens because obviously I like Derrick Henry and I like Jackson. I'm also rooting for Detroit because I really think they should have gone to the Super Bowl last year. They just gave it away, and their team is really good. And I do like Jared Goff, man. I think he got a bad end of the stick with the Rams, but he's playing out of his mind.
Yeah.
And I love their coach. I love the coach. I really do. And then who else I'm rooting for is the Vikings.
Yeah.
They're
fun to root for. I agree.
Sam Darnold come from the Panthers. Everybody said he was washed up. He's done. And this guy in this system is playing out of his mind.
He is.
And by the way, their defense looks the best it's ever been.
Agreed. So I'm going to root for the Commanders because we grew up Redskin fans, and they're just playing great. And Jaden Daniels to me is just so electric.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
So electric, so fun to root for. I'm going to go for them. And then I think my second team's going to be the Lions. I just feel like they're long suffering. They haven't had a championship in 60 years.
Yeah.
And so I can get on board with the Lions. I like the way they've built their team. I like the coach. I like the players. They're all kind of unassuming players. I think Goff was kind of like let go by the Rams, and I don't know. I like their story. So those are my two teams, I guess, now that our three are really bad.
That just sounds so horrible.
I know. And I hope the Lions are able to get Max Crosby, and I hope the Raiders will take those picks and turn them into bona fide Hall of Famers. So.
And maybe Washington can get Hassan Reddick.
Yeah, maybe. Good point. Well, guys, definitely like this video, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you catch Henry's rock review. He's got a big surprise coming up next week, so definitely watch that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys next time on the Sports Guys. Have a great night.
Thanks for watching, guys.